Hello, this is XP Scaling, and today we're going to be covering Hanayama, or his full name being Hanayama Kairu being his first name, surprisingly. Hanayama in the series, he's a fan favorite, surprisingly Baki's best friend, and, he doesn't get much main view in the series, but he has a ton of good scaling and a ton of feats, and that's what we're going to be covering today. In our next video, I am going to be covering Baki versus Gaia, but, I figured Hanayama's a pretty cool character. I want to give him some scaling, so that's what this video is going to be on. So Hanayama's first real feat is when he became, a Yakuza boss. He took on a rival gang consisting of at least 50 people and killed them all in 30 to 15 minutes. He did this bucked naked, and as you can tell by the cuts, they actually had bladed weapons. Those bladed weapons being katanas. Some of them even had, revolvers and, hand pistols. It was only a good fight to him, right? Please note, he only did that at the age of 14, and he's currently 15. Sometime later, he ran into a boxer, being Tommy Carson. Tommy Carson being, a heavyweight champ. Pulls up, right? He gets hired by, a rival gang to have him fight, Hanayama. They had a disagreement. And Hanayama, proceeds to, just tank all the hits from this heavyweight boxer. Uses the time to set up for his own punch. And hits this guy with enough force to cave in his temple. If you take into consideration the force needed to destroy a skull, that being, 1,100 pounds of force, Hanayama, at this point, if you really want to grossly lowball him, should hit with that amount of force. He then proceeds, to set up an uppercut, knocks out all this guy's teeth, and then hits him with enough force so that his head hits the water sprinklers in the storage space that they're in. They're, in the shipment yards of a docking bay, and he hit the, water sprinklers in the storage place that they're in. That's probably at least, easily over 8 to 9 feet high, and that should be impressive considering how tall Hanayama is. He's like 6'3". Tommy scales to his height. So he hit a guy who's relative to his own height and launched him 9 feet into the air. He then proceeds, to brutally torture this guy, grabs him, and then rips off dislocates this guy's jaw. He probably could have ripped it off, but proceeds to dislocate it, puts his finger in this guy's, eyeball socket, right? Spins him around, grabs his arm, and then proceeds to crush his arm into noodles. Right? So at that point, you can honestly say his grip strength should be 1,100 pounds as a bare minimum, which it is, and almost rips his ears off. Luckily, the fight was called off. And please know, Tommy Carson was stronger than Yuri before he had done his 3 months of training. Though Yuri, after his 3 months of training, should be well above what he was when he had fought Baki. When he had fought Baki, he had defeated, in his youth, a whole pack of wolves, took on, in a sparring match, and completely bodied a Muay Thai champion and gave Baki his first L. Had a run-in with, Hanayama. Did really good against Hanayama in comparison to Tommy, even though Hanayama just didn't pay attention to his hits. This right here would have been a kill shot. With the force he had thrown in that punch, destroyed that concrete wall. Made a hole in it. And with the headbutt, grazed the guy to make him slightly bleed a little. Sadly, had grabbed a hold of him and proceeded to pop his arm. This is honestly a signature Hanayama technique that he will pull in a fight. He'll grab, his opponent's arm, from one end on the other end, grab, crush, and will grab them until they pop. And that's what happened here. You could see the skin ruptured, the muscles, and the veins are now all over the place. They're not connected anymore. He then proceeded to launch Yuri with a punch at least easily over 20 feet away and at high speeds. Yuri tried to have, an anime protagonist flashback, had his mouth caved in partially, And again, if you really want to grossly lowball Hanayama's striking strength, 1,100 pounds should be a gross lowball, especially when you see that crater right there. He then, sometime earlier did fight, a wrestler, though, wrestler's fodder. And sometime later, Baki pulls up, mad disrespectful, hits Hanayama. And Hanayama notices that something's different about this hit. Because this is the first time somebody's ever, with a strike, has knocked him down. This should be very impressive considering Baki at this point in the series took on the Yasha Ape. The Yasha Ape being a prehistoric gorilla. And, if you want to estimate the strength of the Yasha Ape, you can honestly, bare minimum, say it's as strong as a silverback, though it's more than likely in the theorized ranges of a silverback strength. And it took that level of strength to technically knock down Hanayama, not knock him out, not, hurt him, just to knock him down and make him touch the floor. The cops pulled up, they both dipped. Hanayama, in a fit of rage, broke a table, pulled up on a car, proceeded to, beat this car like how women were beat in the 1970s. Caved in the roof of the car, kicked it off, destroyed the car engine in a punch, and then proceeded to lift and flip over the car. This should be, also very impressive considering, an average car could probably weigh in about 1 ton. You consider the fact that, Hanayama, being only, 14, 15 at this age, is lifting more than what, professional heavyweight champions can lift. Currently in 2021, like the current world record for lifting weights is probably barely over 1,000 pounds. And here comes Hanayama just flipping over a car because he's angry. He then proceeds, to rip off a tire and rips it in half with nothing but his grip strength. Because he got angry. And he did this all in about 10 minutes. He did that to a poor Cadillac. Oh my God. He also, pulls up on, Baki, and Baki, rip says, man, this guy's even stronger than that great ape that he fought. So that means bare minimum, if you want to, compare Hanayama to the strength of the Yasha ape, is, bare minimum as strong as the Yasha ape. The Yasha ape being, capable of, if we say, based off of, silverback gorillas, theorized strength, could hit with 6,500 pounds of force and lift, 4,000 pounds. But, Hanayama does prove to be much stronger. And in this fight with, Baki here, proceeds to, lift the roof off of this DJ set, slams Baki with it, picks him up, throws him out the window, nearly killed the guy. But sadly, Baki has plot armor. This is where the fight does start, right? Baki even notices that he can't, fight like how he normally would, like a street fight. Hanayama pulled up to kill, not to fight. And Baki does, unleash a pretty good, counterattack on Hanayama. And Baki at this point, like I said earlier, is much stronger than the, Yasha ape. Though, for Hanayama, he is taking many of these blows from a much stronger Baki and is not being forced down like how he was earlier. And something that you're going to see in this fight is Hanayama is slower, but is still relative to Baki in strength and speed. But Baki is, more gifted in skill and a lot more nimble. And something that should honestly be noted is just the kind of beating that Baki does give him. Considering that if you want to lowball Baki, his punches should honestly be at least 6,500 pounds of force, and he's giving mad punches to, Hanayama. He's using a ton of techniques, a technique that should have KO'd Hanayama, and yet he was still standing and proceeded to then, get his teeth kicked in, mouth kicked in, and then gets launched and stomped out and is thrown. And at this point, he realizes, he has to, actually take the fight seriously. Does this by getting nude. All right? If you make this man get serious, he gets nude. And immediately, catches Baki. Reacts and catches Baki, even though he lets himself get a hit to do so. Ignored the hit and proceeds to then pop his arm. And at this point, he then, throws, a counter assault to Baki, kicks him away. And Hanayama, something that I am going to know is, as a fighter, he's not a technical fighter. He's not like a martial artist. He just fights. He's a brawler. And the reason why he does that is because he doesn't believe in techniques. He believes in his strength. And he sees, using techniques as weak. And, in a way, martial arts were invented by the weak to overcome the strong. And he considers himself the strong. So he doesn't consider that he should use techniques. Even though he does have like his own assortment of techniques, but they're not like martial art techniques, as you could see in this fight. And he, proves this by punching the ground and lifts up the floor to throw Baki off balance. Baki at this point adapts because he's the main protagonist. And, something that should be noted is Baki had to adapt and learn the flow of Hanayama's strength to actually counter him. And when this happened, Hanayama smiled because this means that he was allowed to actually fight seriously. The moment he does this, he completely counters Baki's kick. Now, this should honestly be a very impressive speed feat for Hanayama, as he had to react to, Baki's kick. Now, this is impressive due to the fact that when Baki, after his, 3 months of training and defeating the Yasha ape, he immediately saw Yuri on a TV and said, wow, this guy's 5 times slower than what I had seen when I had first fought him. Yuri being a professional boxer, professional boxers, if you want to, say an average, could hit with at least, 32 miles, punch 32 miles per hour in terms of speed. And Baki stated that, Yuri was 5 times slower than what he had seen when he had first fought him. So that would mean in terms of speed, Baki is 5 times faster than, a pro boxer. So if we consider the fact that, a pro boxer on average could hit with, a speed of 32 miles per hour, Baki's 5 times faster. That would mean that Baki's strikes and, reaction time, bare minimum, he could react to and move at in a fight 160 miles per hour. Here comes Hanayama reacting and, blocking with his own punch a 160-mile kick with his fist. He then proceeds to stand and takes a fighting stance. Something that should be noted about his fighting stance is when he does this, he does not use any defense. He does an all-out frontal assault and puts all his strength into his strikes. This may mainly consist of, punches, but he can use kicks, but he's not really a technical fighter, and he'll only use, all-out frontal assault punches, essentially. And when this happened, Baki even stated, wow, his aura had completely changed and ended up, intimidating and putting Baki in a corner. And this is also another technique that Hanayama has, developed, and it's a very effective technique. It is grip strength times body weight times speed will equal destructive force. I am going to get back to this, multiplication later, but for now, I am going to, explain the fight a bit more. He hits Baki with many of these punches, This first punch, as you can see here, completely devastated Baki. Next punch devastates him again, but like, destroys a slot machine that was right behind him. Next punch, right here, completely starts to cave in like a wall somewhat. And, this crater is much bigger than the crater that, he had given to Yuri. Hanayama being at least 6'3", 6'4" in height, this crater is about his size. So Hanayama is well over hitting like 6,500 pounds of force with his punches. He's easily hitting more than that at this point. Baki gets up because he's the main protagonist. That's what happens. And then, they begin to have like a punch-out contest. Baki actually had to resort to turning his fist to counter Hanayama's. And when he did this crushed Hanayama's finger. Hanayama, based on how he fights, he also doesn't believe in defense when he fights. And he'll take on any attack his opponent gives to him head on because he's a real one like that. So he proceeds, to put his finger back in place. High pain tolerance, you're going to see throughout the series and some of his next fights. Does this to all his fingers in his right hand. They're all broken. Proceeds to go in for another punch. Feints. Throws it left and gets his, left hand caved in by Baki's elbow. And despite this, used his right hand to actually punch Baki. Please note, this punch actually did knock him out, but Hanayama being pushed this far in a fight did nearly faint. He did, accept the L. He even said to Baki, yeah, nah, you won. Though I got the last hit in, you win. Now, sadly for, Hanayama, another guy pulls up, that being, Yujiro. Yujiro being, Baki's dad, pulls up, says, the fight's not over. I want to see more. Proceeds, to cave in Hanayama's legs. Picks him up, right? Here's Hanayama, sadly, my boy. Look at what you're doing to him, right? Then proceeds to grab him and throw him across, the dance floor. Now, something that should honestly be noted is how high Hanayama's pain tolerance is, considering both of his legs are broken. The fight that he had with Baki, having his teeth kicked in. He doesn't have teeth currently in this, fight. Due to this fight, all the bruises that he's taking, the pummeling that he's taking from a guy who should be bare minimum as strong as the Yasha ape. And, he thought he was going to stand up, but ended up getting both of his arms broken, sadly. Very much sadly. And, Hanayama is getting completely cucked by, Yujiro at this point. Though something that I am going to state is, in the anime, he did think that, his grip strength would have worked on Yujiro. So something that can honestly be said is, he does have very high willpower. Though, in the manga, it's kind of shown how bad Yujiro is as a savage. And, Yujiro being the savage that he is, used Hanayama's face to block, Hanayama's goon trying to help him out. Please note, Hanayama has gained the loyalty of those who follow him to the point where they are, ride or die. They'll do anything for him. As you can see here, they know how strong Hanayama is. Still pulls up, props to Hanayama. Now, something that I do want to cover again real quick is the grip strength times body weight times speed equals destructive force, as surprisingly, that's a very impressive, multiplier, and is actually gonna, show how strong Hanayama should be theoretically. And I am gonna lowball this real quick, and then I'm gonna show the highball calculation. So, as you can see here, if we say Hanayama's grip strength is at least, 1,100 pounds of force, He weighs at least 160 kilos, that being, 352 pounds. And let's say he punches at the speed of a pro boxer, being, 32 miles per hour per punch is, the speed of his punches. That would mean Hanayama, when he does the grip strength times body weight times speed, is punching with 12,416,448 pounds of force, or 6,208 tons. Please know that's still a low ball, considering, the speed. If you take into, account what Baki said about Yuri being 5 times slower, Yuri before his pro training, was bare minimum punching with his punches were moving at, 32 miles per hour. We say, 5 times slower, so we say Baki got 5 times faster than what he was. That would mean that, in terms of speed, Baki is at least 160, miles per hour in terms of striking speed. Hanayama scales to him. So we take, 1,100 pounds of grip strength, his weight being 352 pounds, and then his max punching speed being 160 miles per hour would equal to 61,953,000 pounds of force, or 30,976 tons of force. This should be very impressive, and I do consider this a high ball for Hanayama. But please note, in terms of like how strong these characters do get, surprisingly, this should be, considerable and should honestly be somewhat valid, as later on in the series they do many more impressive things in the series in comparison to their strength, in comparison with feats. So early on, if you really want to say that Hanayama, right, who had a a punch out with Baki and was being matched by Baki, was fighting someone who could also theoretically hit with bare minimum, if you want to use this calculation, 12,416,448 pounds of force. High ball it 61,953,000 pounds of force if you highball it. And please note, that's if you use the calculation that he, does for his attacks, which is actually quite valid, as in the series it's used a lot, and in the fight it was used, at least by Hanayama. So I hope you guys, enjoyed this video. I hope you guys, appreciate how strong Hanayama should be. Big amp, nobody's really covered this. Hope you guys enjoyed. Dislike that, like button, unsubscribe, and I hope you guys have a nice one. Peace.